Yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah, very, very good question.
Yeah, this is a very good question.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good question.
Oh, that's a great question.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, Zanger.
It's a great question.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. Really good question.
Gosh, this question to me, I hate this question.
That's a loaded question. But okay.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for your support of Indie Agency News. And let's meet an indie agency. Now, we're a little different here.
A little bit.
We had to call this thing something, right, Lindsay?
Yeah.
So, first off, thank you so much for supporting all of this. It's been so great that you've lent so much as a member, but so much to independent agencies that you're involved with, and I'll let you explain what it is you do and what IKPN does. But first off, huge thanks. And you're up in Edmonton right now, so a big wave to the north for you for that. But serious kudos for that. I do want to start because you're agency adjacent, which but also in the mix all the time, and you're in that interesting spot. So explain a little bit about IKPN and then also what it is you're doing there as well.
Sure. I like how you said it's industry or agency adjacent, because I always dreamed of being a cool agency person. I'm just not. So, but I get to hang out with a lot of really cool agency people, especially in this little IKPN world. So IKPN, what we stand for is Independent Knowledge Partner Network. What we do is we do minority equity investment in advertising and media agencies all over North America. And we invest in them. Then we support the heck out of them with whatever growth goal they've got. We get really obsessed with what the owner wants to do. And then we connect them together through a nice little community that they're able to talk to peers about different problems that they're working with together or working on together, or they might be experiencing together. And we just like to connect them and help them collaborate in a much easier way. So that's basically what IKPN is.
I like how simple it's. It's so funny because and I think we might veer a little bit different from the standard format because the questions that we ask are very, very specific, and I'll shift these a little bit so that they're maybe a little bit more relevant. You mentioned you've touched on what it is that you do. Now, what would you say would be the top 3 core strengths of the organization as it relates to making investments in agencies, but also being part of their story? What are 3 important things for people to understand?
Sure. Where our core strengths really lie is really in areas that agencies oftentimes aren't spending a lot of time on, or maybe haven't invested in themselves. So sometimes it's kind of funny when we first meet an agency to come into IKPN. And when we introduce me specifically, my background is human resources. So
right.
Super untraditional investment background. But it's not often that an agency, especially the smaller agencies, have invested in somebody that's got a really strong people background. So
right.
On the people side, management side, leadership development side, that's where my core strength is. And that's where I oftentimes advise our agencies. You'll also often see on the finance side, which I don't think is a surprise to many people that are listening to this, that finances are scary and it can be a little bit tricky to understand the world of cash flow and the lumpiness that can oftentimes happen in the agency space.
Right.
So we have somebody in our team that helps us with and helps our agencies with understanding forecasting and budgeting, and how do you speak to a bank? How can you walk into a bank and speak about additional financing that's attached to it? The other part I would say is we've got sister companies that are sitting on either side of us. One of them is Lono, one of them is Dandelion. And what's helpful about that is we will strategically help our organizations with really pumping up their media. So helping them with anything new in the ad tech space. It feels like you wake up every morning, there's something new in ad tech. So we have talent on our team that can, all the crazy questions about media that you might have, you can phone them up and ask whatever it is that you need. And also be able to scale up with the talent that we've got sitting on either side of us in Lono and Dandelion.
Right.
So, those three.
I'm unpacking some stuff here because when it comes to investment, or someone's going to take someone's going to take a piece of our it's scary. It can it can feel scary. And I understand why. I mean, M&A is very, very different now. How long has IKPN been going?
About 4 years. About 4 years.
Yeah, but even 4 years ago, it was different. And what would you say to somebody that, because part of it too is they think if somebody makes an investment in us, then we're not genuinely or truly independent. What would you say to that?
I would say, what's important for you to know and understand is IKPN specifically, we're a minority equity investor. So we aren't looking to be disruptive to the cap table. We're not looking for an enormous slice of the organization. Right. We're looking for between 5 and 15% is usually where we operate. But the financial investment isn't going to be where it's going to be life-changing money. It's about it's not disruptive, we often say. What we do though is we spend more time with considering the people and the owners that are in the group. I think it's funny that you talked about it can be scary, because it really can be scary. I think stranger danger is a real thing when you start thinking about who's the stranger coming into my organization. I don't want someone taking control of the decisions I've made. It's the real blood, sweat, and tears that I've put into this company, away from my friends, my family, all those things. And you've got these strangers coming into your company that are giving you different advice or different tools and have just different access. But it's really about, we feel very strongly about the folks that are in our group. They are really important to us. What the owner wants to achieve is really important to us, so critical. It's not the profit potential. It's about us being able to provide really intellectual capital and some of that technology capital as well, that just helps them with being able to run their business in a different way that can be really scary to ask other people for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're Canadian, so it's like that's probably helpful.
Big time.
And Western Canadian at that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we've got all the stereotype here for sure.
No, hardly. Alberta's fantastic.
Yeah.
Explain to me, if you're clearly, obviously, in this space, yet I'm curious about what brands think, what marketers think, how you connect and talk to marketers about your model, about the agencies you invest in, because you need each of it, right? And so I'm curious about what those conversations are like with brands.
That's a really fascinating question. We will talk to our agencies often about how we're not the front face of the agency. So we oftentimes aren't in front of the brands. We're more in the background for the agency. So you don't see us sitting in front of the brands a lot. When we do have access into the brand, maybe someone that isn't working with one of the agencies in the group, it's really about us just telling them exactly what I've said on this call, where it's, we've invested in really cool people that are doing incredibly cool things. We've invested in shops that are independent only. So, all the indies on this that are watching this would know that indies are having a moment where it's, where you can have people that are at the top of the house actually doing the work. And it's just different than the really, really big holding company agency or some of the larger agencies that are out there. So I don't know, Doug, I don't have a great answer for it because we don't talk to brands a pile.
Right.
But we do, whenever we do, it's all about talking about we've got really great people and we know the owner and we know and we understand what we're trying to accomplish. So we believe so heavily in the owners that we have invested in that makes the conversation fairly simple.
Right.
But we focus so much more heavily on the actual owner and the actual agency versus the brand.
Yeah, no, it makes, well, and the other thing too is, as you're talking about that, what's interesting is that there's a level of clarity, because essentially you're working, you said, you're working a little bit behind the scenes, and that's a really great place to be, because you can be advisory in a way that really has the best interest of the investment that you're making.
That's exactly right. I trip on the answer a little bit, because the agencies, one of my little crowd tested statements I love to make is, when we invest in a company, you'll never see IKPN, you'll never see our face showing up in the organization.
Right.
We're not that fun, sexy brand. We're this boring, intentional brand sitting in the background. And let's say there's some big fancy news article that comes out about that agency. Well, you might see our shoulder. You're never really going to see IKPN show up, because it's
Right.
about the agency, and that's what's way more important to us.
Right. Wish you would have had a steak and ad week when I was there. Anyway, did I say that out loud? What are you looking for in an agency in terms of investment? And I know that is such a reductive question, because it's, I mean, what do you, obviously there's a real business side, but bridge the business, and you talk a lot about the owner. You talk a lot about the leadership. That clearly is a very important aspect to this. So how are you looking at from the left brain side of it in a practical sense, but also the right brain of we really feel strongly about this person?
I love that question. So my background, you guys have heard that my background is about people, and I had about 15 years in HR before I was here, and my focus was on talent. So when I think about the agency owners that come into our group, I'm always thinking about high potential leadership and people who are incredibly smart, they are incredibly emotionally intelligent, and they just work really, really hard. So we spend a pile of time getting to know the agency during the time that we are just talking about the investment portion, at the same time that they're interviewing us to make sure that it's the right group for us to be making an investment in them. So what we are always watching for are those three characteristics: incredibly smart, incredibly emotionally intelligent, and are working their butts off with the agency that they've got. But it's really all about that high potential piece. The financials are interesting for us, but the people that we're investing in are way more important. The other part that I would say we're always watching for is, because we're creating also this really wonderful community where agency owners that are in IKPN need to know that they've got a friend to be able to phone up, whether it's someone in the proper IKPN group or whether it is somebody that is an agency owner of one of the other IKPN agencies.
Right.
Try to make sure that we're getting people that are really into collaboration and that are passionate about that community aspect to it. And that's an important aspect for us as well, is because you have to be comfortable phoning up your friend to be able to ask questions that can feel unsafe sometimes.
Yeah. Well, kid, you don't even know.
Yeah.
What's the most rewarding part of this for you?
When I was really early in my career, I spent it helping a franchise ownership group with these small business owners with building their businesses, and it was a lot of fun. I had a really good time watching those franchise owners to build up their businesses and help them to answer questions and things like that. 15 years later, after spending a very nice time in corporate life, I was able now to come and help small business owners again, but I had a way bigger bucket of tools to be able to help with. So I love it. I absolutely love it when an agency owner calls me and goes, I don't know how to answer this. I don't know what I'm doing on this particular thing or that particular thing, or hey, can I test out an idea with you. That's the stuff that really gets me jazzed up, because it is so fun to help them remove barriers that they don't have to think about it, and they can just go out and sell and win and create incredibly wonderful creative stuff.
Yeah.
That's what gets me jazzed.
I noticed in the background that the city of Edmonton used up their horn honk for the day.
I don't know. I'm surprised you haven't heard a siren either.
No, it's like I heard a horn. It's like, oh, they used their horn honk
One time.
They're allocated one horn honk.
That's right. That's right.
They don't do that in Vancouver. They don't do that in Calgary. They don't do that in Edmonton. New York, it's just a constant symphony of it. Hey, seriously, in all seriousness, you and I have gotten to know each other and each other's businesses a little bit over the past year. And you and I have, I think that where we're from and where we live, I think that sensibility comes through a little bit. How does being in Edmonton for you? Because you're not in New York, you're not in Chicago, you're not in London. I'm not in New York. I'm not, I'm tucked up in my little corner of the world. But there's something about that to me that I think allows a different, and I know it's not better or worse or anything like that. It's just a different point of view and a different way of approaching how we look at things. I'm curious about being from Edmonton and how that influences and impacts your work and just the way that you approach all of this.
Oh boy. I would love to say it's really simple, because there is a super pragmatic approach that we take.
Okay, that's what I was going to say. That does make sense. That tracks for sure. Alberta in general, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It gets a little bit tricky. I'm not going to lie to you. When you're talking to somebody in Atlanta or in Phoenix or wherever, it can feel, when you don't know the Western Canadian culture, you don't know Western Canadian world, it does feel a little bit different. And I often joke that agencies will tell us, you're not asking for control. You're not asking for a board seat. You're doing minority equity investment only. This doesn't make a lot of sense. This sounds too good to be true.
Right.
And it kind of makes you tilt your head. I know for the first little while, I was like, this is just the way we operate. But I've learned over time that it does sound really, it sounds really lovely and really great. And it is. But then once they start working with us, they're like, oh, okay, you guys are actually who you say you are. And of course we are.
Right.
But we just want to help and develop that organization. We introduce the partner to the opportunities that they just wouldn't normally access. So I don't know. It's kind of funny. There's a pile of trust and a pile of relationship building that has to happen.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
it can feel really too good to be true sometimes. I'm sure.
No, I get that. And I think that I would say that a lot of us in this industry have been burned.
Yeah.
And that's like a real thing. And that part sucks. I hate hearing when something goes sideways for an indie and it was something that someone was nefarious about. And I can understand why, especially, you said, US markets, that of course they're going to be skeptical and they're going to think something is off, because that's the way we've been conditioned down here. And that's a shame. that's absolutely a shame. But at the same time, I think one of the reasons that we sync up so nicely is that we are mission based. Yours is different in that you're making a very direct investment in the agency, whereas over here, what we're trying to do is let the agency make an investment in us so that we can help raise their visibility. And it just feels good. It just feels good. And you're doing something really good.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's just way too Pollyanna of me, but it is that simple. It's about helping agency owners achieve their hopes and dreams. And running a business is so hard. I'm not an entrepreneur. I don't run a business myself. So I get to hear the pains and the sufferings that our agency owners are going through, and it's incredibly hard. So our team works really hard to make sure that an agency owner feels comfortable with phoning us, that feeling safe to be able to go, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
We don't oftentimes do that, but they have a trusted space that they can come and ask a question to. It sounds kind of silly, but it's really helpful. And oftentimes it becomes a business therapy session, which we know it's an important space to be in as well.
Yeah, I get that too.
Yeah.
Neither of us are licensed therapists.
No.
Let's be very clear on that.
Very clear. Yes, thank you.
But we like to hang, and we'll hang with you.
I want to make sure that they have a spot to, if they need to vent, phone here and vent. Like
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I feel exactly the same way, and I promise we won't do it publicly. Everybody, that's part of those 15-minute consulting sprints. Not to be selling our wares here, but like if you just want to vent for 15 minutes, fine, go for it.
Call me up. But you know what? You're oftentimes also going to hear from me. Okay, now what are we going to do next? Because I will vent like crazy. I love it. But then I want to know what we're going to do after that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I gotta say, it's are you allowed to name check some of the agencies that you invest in?
Of course, I would love to.
Just give us the list.
Sure. You know what? I will always talk about the original agency that we invested in. They are so wonderful. They're called Mediology Media out of Langley, BC. They're fantastic group of owners, fantastic group of leaders. And they're cool. They run just media, and they
cool.
When we invested in them about 4 years ago, it was in COVID. Many people have went through a really tough time in COVID, including them. And we were able to help them with scaling their media business and scaling the technology and giving them access to some different tools and tech, which was really amazing. Yep. And now it has evolved into this really fantastic space of consulting with them on culture and people strategy and all the wonderful things that are attached to that. So that one's really fun.
Yeah.
We also have some smaller agencies. I think about one of the most recent ones we invested in. They're called Authentic Audience. The owner is named Krista Ritma out of Santa Cruz, California. When we invested, she was a one-person show, and she was just looking to how to scale the agency. And over a very short period of time, she's added 3 additional people and doing incredibly well. So piles of fun. I also always get excited talking about the very first US investment we did, and that was with Ken Media down in Austin, Texas. Ken Media, they kind of accidentally landed in the world of running a media shop. And they needed help with just how do I access some of the tech and tools, and we're able to get them that access in a very quick way, so they can just walk into a brand and say yes. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. Anyway, those 3 examples.
Yeah. And then
we have 16 of those.
Yeah, and then I think our friends in Vancouver, Definitely Real.
Just
formerly the Social Circle. Yeah.
That's right. Alexis and Danielle, they are just did a beautiful rebrand.
The redesign's great.
Oh, yeah. So awesome, and it's so them, which is really cool.
And it's a great story. It's just they're super sharp. Listen, we could sit here and talk all day, but we probably shouldn't. But I do want to encourage people, seriously, get in touch with Lindsay. You will see her out on the circuit for sure. Yeah. And it was so funny because I was walking by you in Cannes, and then you were like, "Are you Doug Zanger?" It's just like, yeah, sadly I am.
You're a celebrity Doug.
No, it's honestly it's the hair. I mean, it's like the only thing that's all I got going right now.
That's hilarious.
But what I do have to say though is honestly, anybody who is even thinking of this, please reach out to Lindsay. I think the world of you. You've been an early supporter of what we're doing here, and being half Italian, loyalty is a big thing for me. So appreciate it very much, and we appreciate your support and best wishes. Forge ahead.
No, thanks, Doug. I appreciate being on the call. Thank you.